Morning. Today we are continuing with working with those percentages. We are doing CO32. I can compute percentages of whole numbers. So time for some real life application of using these percentages. We've been going back and forth with fractions and percents and decimals. Now this is when we use these things in our daily life. So perhaps you've been asked some variation of the following. Maybe you're one of my friends doing basketball right now. Let's say she took 10, or hockey. She took 10 shots and made 30% of them. How many shots did she make? We're not answering it right now. I'm going to read through those real life things and we're going to see if we know how to solve them. His allowance for the month is $50 and he spent 40% of it. How much did he spend? The test was worth 40 points and she got a 90%. How many did she get correct? The bill at the restaurant was $60 and I left a 20% tip. How much was the tip? So let's answer some of these questions above using percentages. So let's look at the shots question. She took 10 shots and made 30% of them. When we're looking at those stats, how would we solve that? How do you think, Zelda?
We could turn it into a fraction, like 30 over 10.
So we know that she made 30%, and that equals 30 over, not 10.
Over 100, because that's a magic
100 is our magic number, so 30 over 100. She made 30%, 30 over 100. What do you think we do next? So we want to know how many shots if she took 10 shots and made 30% of them, how many shots did she make? How do you think we solve that, Melanie? Okay, so how would I set that up? Okay, Zelda?
You can divide it by 10, getting a 3 over 10.
We already have, well, so that's just simplifying. So that would just be simplifying it. So it's not always going to work out where we could simplify it and get an answer. And this time we actually can, but it's not always like that. What do you think, Madeline? How would we convert that to a decimal? So we could say she made 30% of 10 shots. So you're converting that 30% to 0.3. What does the word of mean? What operation? Who remembers? We've talked about this a long time ago. Jimena, what does of mean? Multiplication. Do you think we could solve it? 0.3 times 10? Would that give us an answer? It would. What answer would we get? Leah? 3. If we do 0.3 and we times it by 10, we get an answer of 3. We could say, somebody had said use division. Gonna use it just in a little bit different way. If we have 30 out of 100 and we want to know how many out of 10, we're making a what? A what, Madison? Ratio. We're doing a proportion. So if we want to know how many out of 10, and we know it's 30 out of 100, we could say what times 10 equals 100? That would be 10. So what times 10 equals 3? What times 10 equals 30? Madeline? 3. So you could solve it with the proportion. You could solve it with that multiplying the decimal, and we get the same answer. Let's look at our next one. Let's look at the allowance. His allowance for the month is $50, and he spent 40% of it. How much did he spend? So we know we could do, if we're looking at those percentages, 40% is what fraction? Zelda?
40 over 50.
Nope.
40 over 100.
40 over 100. Remember, 100 is our magic number. So if we know the fraction, 40 over 100, what proportion could we set up with it? What do we know and what do we need to know? Zelda?
We could do everything with the box, or we could do with a ratio.
Yeah. So what would I put on top?
We'll put an N.
Yep, that's my question mark.
And then you could do a 10.
How much money did he have?
He had 50 to 50.
He had $50, but we don't know how much he spent of that $50.
Oh.
So how do I solve this proportion?
We have to. Okay.
Marina, how would I solve this proportion? You're busy writing away there. What you doing? How would I solve it? Do you know how I would solve it though? Yeah. To go from 50 to 100, I'm going to multiply it by that 2. So what do I multiply by 2 to get 40? 20. So he started with, or he spent $20 of the $50. If we're going to do it with the percentages going to decimals, how would I write that? So when we were talking about the shots, there was 30% of 10. How would I write that for the allowance problem? Madeline, do you know it? No. How does our problem start? His allowance for the month is $50 and he spent 40% of it. So it would be that 40% of how much? He had $50 in allowance. He spent 40% of $50. So if we want to convert that 40% to our decimal, 0.40 of means to multiply $50. What is 0.40 times 50? So I see calculators out. What is 0.4 times 50? Same? 20. Either way we do it, we get the same answer of $20. So you need to ask yourself, does it make more sense for me to do a proportion, or do working with the decimals and multiplying it make more sense? Either way, we get the same answer. So let's look at our test question. The test is worth 40 points, and she got a 90%. If I'm going to solve it using the fraction way, how would I write that? Zelda, I know you like the fraction. So 90% equals 90 over 100. What do I do next? Zelda?
You make it in, you put N over 40.
Yeah, because there were 40 problems.
Into 90 over 100.
Now what do I do? What do I multiply 40 by to get to 100? Bryn? How did you figure out it was 2.5, Bryn? Yeah, because we can't do 40 and know exactly what to multiply up by. We go, oh, that's not an easy number. So remember, we can go backwards and divide. 100 divided by 40 gets us that 2.5. So if we do 40 times 2.5, we get 100. Do we know what to multiply by 2.5 to get 90? That's not so easy, so we could go backwards and divide 90 divided by 2.5 gets us what answer for n? Claire?
36.
36. If we want to do the decimal way, remember we had 90% of 40. How do I change that into decimals? 90%. What decimal is 90%, Ava?
0.9.
Yeah.
0.
0.9 or 0.90. What does of mean? What math operation?
Multiply.
Multiply by 40. 0.9 times 40. What answer do we get? 36. Both ways we get 36. The gnomes want to escape. And our last one, our tip. The bill at a restaurant was about $60 and I left a 20% tip. How much was the tip? So how would I write that with my fractions? Looking back on what we did for the shots, the allowance, and the test, how would I write that for the tip? Jimena? Oh, hold on. Remember what we're going to put over the 100 is the percent. Yes, so 20% equals 20 over 100. So then how do I set up my ratio, my proportion, Jimena?
And then, 60 over.
So we know we want it to equal that 20 over 100. If the bill at the restaurant was $60 and I left a 20% tip, how much was the tip? So I want to know that N, how much did I leave out of the $60? So if we had $60, so it would be N over 60. So how do I go from 60 to 100? I don't know off the top of my head, so I would divide that. 100 divided by 60. And I get 100 divided by 60. That would be 1.6666. So I don't know what to multiply that by to get to 20. So again, I'm going to divide. 20 divided by 1.66666. And what do I get for my answer? If you do 20 divided by 1.66666, what do you actually need to use your calculator? 20 divided by 1.66666.
Don't you have to divide by 1/2?
No, you have to divide by 1.66666.
Don't you do 100 divided by 60 and then multiply? Oh yeah, never mind.
Yeah, that would have been if we knew this number, Madison, and not that one. It is $12. If we want to do it doing the decimal way, how would I set that up? Nobody should be turning their page because I have not turned my page. We are all working together. Madeline, how would I set that up?
You would do 0.20 times 60.
Yeah, because we know it's 20% of 60 is our tip. So 0.2 times 60 gives me what number? That gives me that same answer as well. Both methods get us the same answer. So now it says using percentages, find the following values, show your work. Look at this. These are the same as this that we did here. 20% of 40. How am I going to solve that? What do I have to write? 20% of 40, because I'm not going to put 20% into my calculator. There is no of in my calculator. What calculation am I going to put into the calculator, Lilia?
0.20 times of 40.
Times 40. 0.20 times 40. And it does say show your work. You do have to write this calculation out. And then you have to do the math and put your answer. So you have to write the calculation out, what you're putting into your calculator. So do that for all three of those. Now let's look at our second page. Using percentages, find the following values, show your work. Oh my goodness, it's the exact same thing. Show your work. Write out what that decimal is times the 30. Put it into your calculator and write your answer. Now it says word problems. Woo. Word problems aren't so scary if you can figure out what it is you're supposed to be putting in. After a nice evening out with your family, you offer to pay the bill for dinner. The bill is $60. How much would a 20% tip be? That's just like the bill from the first page. Set it up the same way, but using these numbers. Oh my goodness, it's the exact same. Come on, I'm glad you're paying attention. This is an easy one for you. You are comparing shooting stats of your three favorite basketball players. Bobby McBobbitt made 30% of 10 shots. Billy McBillett made 70% of 20 shots. And Shevin Kultz, he's Russian, made 20% of 80 shots. Who made the most shots? Who made the least? So you need to find out what the answer is for all three of them. And then say which one made the most and which one made the least amount of shots. So we're doing that same math. So Bobby made 30% of 10. So write out what that calculation would be, write how many shots Bobby made. Do the same thing for Billy, do the same thing for Shevin. Tell me which one's the most, which one's the least. But you do have to show your work. So show the work. Don't just write down answers. And then there are a few more word problems for you. I want you to try to figure these out. Oh no, next one's estimating. Let's see how we're supposed to estimate. Estimate the following values by rounding the percentage to the nearest 10. So instead of saying 21% of 30, what would I put? And then 20% of 30. I would round it down to that 20. So then I would do 0.20 times 30 and then put your answer. 38% would round to what percentage? Madeline? 40%. So that 38, that 8 rounds us up to the 40. So you need to be practicing those rounding skills. Then you're going to do the bottom two, see if you can figure out how to solve those. Any questions on today's assignment? All right. If you are at home, we hope you are well. We hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.